Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St Pierre.
Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity podcast with myself, Peter Lant, with James St Pierre, who's
hello.
There.
Hello.
And Paul, who's down below.
Hello.
Yeah, so, I wasn't here last week. Apologies for that. I was on a course or a holiday, as Paul called it earlier, and I took massive offence to that. So thanks for that. It was really, really hard work. Have you got your little violin, Paul?
I thought you were a northerner. I thought you could take these things.
I went into a local lockdown zone as well. So I was like, it's dangerous. It was danger. We'll love that. Anyway, it's just the three of us this week, no guest. We do have a very special guest next week, but I'll let James tell you about that because he arranged that. So what we were going to do is, just to start out, we're going to do a little recap of what we've spoke about, because this is now episode 9. So we've had 8 episodes previously, so we're going to talk about a recap, which will segue nicely into today's topic. Okay? So in the beginning, we were speaking about the values and what sort of person you want to be and you want to see yourself as in the world. Okay? And then from there, you can then kind of do your training around that, okay, and become that person, okay, without any excuses or anything like that. But then after that, what we had was we were coming out of lockdown. This was a couple of months ago now. We're coming out of lockdown, so it was all about the lessons that we've learned from that and how we can train through lockdown, which might be prominent again. So I think it was yesterday, it was announced that the gyms don't necessarily close in Tier 3. However, if your gym does close and you haven't got a place to go to, what did you learn last time? And if you didn't learn anything, go back and listen to the episode and you can learn from that. But then we were talking about habits and how to develop those so you can you can do things almost automatically without having to think about it. It just becomes something that you do, and how to develop those and not try to develop too many in one go. And also how to replace bad habits with good habits. And then we spoke about goals and whether you need a goal, like a solid goal, or you just need to develop the habits to get towards a goal of just doing stuff, just being healthier in general. Which brought us into nutrition when we had Mike Sweeney on as the first guest, the inaugural guest. And we tried to talk about nutrition, but we ended up talking about mindset because that's what mainly it's about. Yeah, and we're training for longevity, because we all want to get older gracefully and move well. And speaking of grace and moving well, we had Rick Brown on, who's in his 60s, Mr. Mace Man, and he knows all about that and training with finesse. So I think that brings us nicely into what we were going to talk about today, which is kind of, Paul mentioned this, because I said, why not talk about if there is another lockdown, which we're not sure whether there will be, but there's local lockdowns. Gyms were closing all over the place. Now that's been reversed, mainly due to a guy in Liverpool who was very vocal about that. So he's done very well there, because obviously gyms are, depending on what your view is, but my view would be gyms, fitness, anything is part of the solution rather than anything else with this COVID thing,
And we do also, Pete, we do also have listeners. I know we got some people listening in Australia and some people listening in America and Ireland as well. And it's different, so there are obviously in the UK or in England, we should say, gyms are mainly open now, but obviously other places aren't quite so lucky. So we've still got friends of ours in Australia, Ireland, America, probably other places as well that are still locked down, haven't we?
Yeah, exactly. So this is that's the hard thing, because it's different everywhere, isn't it? So hopefully this will help everybody who you've just mentioned then, because we'll be talking about, how to train when you haven't got access to your gym, how to train when you've got a pause. So Paul mentioned this when we were talking before we did when we had the idea of what to talk about. And it's like, what do you do when it's you mentioned Christmas is coming up in a few months. Everyone has a couple of weeks off and eats loads. Then what do? Oh, you just forget about it. Holidays, weddings, all those sorts of things. Things that happen to derail you, which we talked about when you're making habits and goals. So it's how to get beyond that and how to not be that person who just like tries something, gives it up, and keeps going back to it until 10 years down the line, you think like, well, what's happened? I've got old. What happened there? So anyway, we'll go over to Paul because it was your idea. What do you have to say about that?
I'm on the spot now. I have to say something interesting.
You do?
Yeah.
Well, I haven't said anything interesting yet, so you might as well.
We'll start somewhere. So it's very common for me, and I'm sure it is for you as well, that clients come to us because they haven't seen success in their health, and therefore we want to try and change that trajectory and build their skill set, build their it's not just about diets, it's not just about training hard, it's not just about eating good food, etc. It's about changing the whole way we approach the art of building health. And when we look at healthy people and we look at people who struggle with their health, there are some major differences in the way people act. And lockdown really, from my mind, opened up those people who continued to train and they didn't skip a heartbeat. As soon as they went into lockdown, whether they trained with us or whether they found another way of training and eating well, nothing changed. Maybe the expression of how they got healthy changed. So they had to buy a load of equipment at home. They had to maybe sign up to online classes, whereas in the past they would go down to the gym. They took up cycling rather than doing something indoors. There was lots of different alternatives and they didn't really see the limitations. They just wanted, well, I'm a healthy person, I'm going to do healthy things. And they found other expressions for that. Whereas a lot of other people went, oh, the thing I normally do, I can't do anymore. Right, well, I'll press pause. And I think that was the word that goes through my head all the time. And even before COVID, it was a major reason why I would either see clients kind of end their memberships or fail to see the success they want. And the pause mentality, if I'm going to kind of explain it in a little bit of clarity, is that whenever something happens outside the health journey or the focus, so whether it's a 28-day program or 12-week program or just a 3-month commitment, whatever it is that you've signed up for, something happens, whether it's a work issue, a family issue, a birthday, a holiday, whatever it is, that there is a big pause button that's pressed. And to my mind, all that does is teach you the ability to pause better. So we get good at pausing. We don't get good at creating continuity, don't get good at getting the results we want. We just get better at pausing. And I suppose I wanted to open the discussion up to firstly, you guys and your experiences of what comes to you, why people pause, and also some of the solutions that you may have to address that, because it's one of the big questions for me, and because I know that I can get really good results from my clients, but they kind of need that continuity. They need to have made that commitment to themselves, and they need to have they need to not go into that and we call it yo-yoing. That's probably one of the most common ways of referring to it. We yo-yo diet, up and down, but often it's like just as easy as a pause. And they get these micro pauses. It's not that they suddenly do something and they don't do something for a long time. It's just that they pause for short periods that add up into these longer stretches where really, when you look at it, 40% of the time they're active and then 60% of the time they're pausing, and all they get good at is pausing. It's why I have a freeze in my membership. You can freeze for a certain period of time. Many people don't use it. Some people do. I've always kind of tinkered with the idea of getting rid of it, but sometimes people need a bit of flexibility. So it's so over to you guys. I'll be interested to know what you're seeing and how it's expressed and what your solutions are.
Any thoughts, James?
Yeah, just unmute myself. From what you were saying there, Paul. Yeah, I mean, I totally understand what you're saying and get it, and I recognize that with my members as well. And the way that I kind of, as you were describing it there, the way that I kind of see it as almost is everybody's got different levels of stress and different kind of stresses that they've got on them at all times, haven't they? Especially probably a lot of the people that we kind of tend to see. And it's like almost if you're in a hot air balloon and the hot air balloon starts being pulled down, they look for heavy things to throw overboard to kind of lighten the load so they can keep moving forward. And it's kind of just, it depends upon what they choose to throw out of the hot air balloon, what ballast they choose to lose, and I think what you described beautifully earlier was the kind of people who we went into lockdown and they thought, well, because, and it goes back to that kind of the way they see themselves, their character, because they are people who exercise, they are healthy people, they're people who exercise and train and they like to move. When they're faced with that kind of potential obstacle, it's not, the first thought isn't, well, I'll stop exercising. The first thought is, well, how can I continue exercising and how can I kind of change tack and how can I find alternatives? And you mentioned things like, walking more outside, cycling, getting equipment and doing it at home, that sort of thing. So I think once people actually see themselves as where exercise is, it goes back to the habit that Peter was talking about earlier, where people do exercise as a habit and it is a part of their lives, they will find an alternative. But for many people, especially in the early stages of finding this healthy lifestyle and exercising, people tend to look at for the easiest thing to drop. And for some people, the easiest way to remove stress from their lives is just to say, well, I'll stop going to the gym, or I'll park that for now.
That's a good point, because we forget that actually adding something like fitness and diet into your life is a kind of stress.
Exactly, and especially if you're not used to, if it's still at that stage before it's become a habit, and you may be in the first month or two of doing it. And the other thing as well is the other element, which is the kind of the purely the financial side of it as well, whereby people may have a gym membership or may have coaching and personal training and that sort of thing. And when things kind of happen, such as happens in the lockdown, and maybe people are furloughed, maybe people get made redundant, or people have just got the fear of that happening in the future. It may not have even happened yet, but some people then think, how can I sort of, tighten the purse strings and make savings? And again, for some people, the gym is the first thing that they'll think that's a kind of a luxury or an expense that I can cut from my budget every month, and then that'll save me some money. But on the flip side, the other character that we spoke about, it's almost like, well, actually, that's an essential. That's sort of like part of my life. That's part of who I am. That's good for my health. That's good for my mental health. So rather than cutting, say, the gym, they'll look to maybe, cut down their Sky TV package or cut down, what other things they spend, so that that will still facilitate them continuing to exercise. So I think, it very much depends on the person they are and where they are on their journey. What do you think, Pete? I mean, you've obviously in a similar kind of boat to us guys as well, I presume.
Yeah. Something Paul said there. I've got a few things written down now, actually, but something Paul said there about stress. And this was one of the things we were going on about this thing I was on last week. And to get better at handling stress, you need to be put in a stress situation. So we know that with everything, right? But with training, like Paul said, training, getting better, better with your nutrition, all of that is a stress on the body, because the body, the brain, the organism, the person is used to doing something. And to change that is stressful. But you need to have a decent, at least a small amount of stress to be able to make you better at handling that stress. And then you can increase that stress as you get more used to it in anything, right? In getting a new job, in, becoming fit and healthy, in, having a family, getting, buying a puppy, which has been stressful as hell for me, but those sorts of things, right? Things that you're not used to. So that's why people do, the Wim Hof cold water training and, go into a sauna. That's actually quite stressful, because you get hotter and your body's got to deal with that and it's not used to it. So lots of things like that. So if you avoid that, so if people are saying, right, the gym's closed, or I've got to tighten the purse string, so I'll not go there and all that, you're avoiding that stress, And if you do that, you just get very good at avoiding stress. And then you don't actually seek out wanting to improve anything or improve the thing that you said you did. So that's where, and Paul talked about this a couple of times in previous podcasts, you become that character. And the character of the person who's got the values and has got the habits and developed all of those over a period of time and has earned the right to be able to have a little bit of time off because they know they'll go straight back into it. So you might have a week off on holiday, say, I can't hit a gym or anything like that, so I'll just go walking or I'll go swimming like we were talking earlier, or cycling or whatever. Or, as I do lots of walking and stuff, but on holiday, I'm just like, I'm enjoying myself. And when I come back, I know I'll go straight back to my training program and get on it, because that's what I do. 10 years ago, that wouldn't have happened. I would have got back and went, oh, I'm tired, I'll go back. Because if you have a week off, then, then it's achy and stuff like that, isn't it, after you get back? So I'll give it another week. And then before 6 months have gone, before you know it. And then what I used to do was just put myself in for another half marathon and train for that. And then
things, I mean, that's a good point, really, because sometimes it's like, how do you overcome that pause mentality? Because, sometimes it is having those lofty goals, and we've talked about goals, what about them? But sometimes they do drive people to continue. I mean, I do have goals at the moment, and the reason I'm in training them every day is because I know that someone's expecting me to send a video, that I've also got a kind of idea of what I want to achieve, and that keeps pushing me forwards. And I think people start drifting because they start losing track of why they're doing it. And I think one of all the things we talk about on this podcast is like, well, why are we doing things? Why is the mindset? The mindset's going to drive us. How do we commit these things to our nature and our character so that we just naturally go in the right direction because we've practiced going in the right direction. At the moment, people are practicing going in the wrong direction, but we've got to instill in our clients the idea that if they continue practicing good habits and good ways of thinking, because it's not just about behaving, it's also about thinking and marrying the two. And over time, that it will become just a natural thing.
Mm-hmm. And also, I think, talking about the stress thing, the better you become at handling it. So I've dealt with this with clients in the past, because they come in and some of them are just like, they're starting from the very beginning. And even just, the idea of picking something up and putting it down again or doing some mobility is stressful for them. And they're all like, some of them will be trying to deal with maybe divorces or whatever, big life family events when you get to your middle age, and then lots of things start to happen, don't they? And you start to question life and all that sort of stuff. I'm getting a bit philosophical here, but that's I do. So lots of things become or seem to be more stressful. But if you learn to be able to handle them. So I've got clients who've been with me for like 3-4 years. And something will happen now, and I'll be like, imagine if that happened to you 4 years ago, you would have had a meltdown, you'd have disappeared for 2 months, and I wouldn't have heard from you. Whereas now, you're just like, well, it was quite stressful for a couple of weeks. They still turn up for the sessions. They talk about it, which is a big deal as well. They're happy to talk about it, be open and honest about it. And then all of a sudden, they're like, oh, well, I dealt with it. It was stressful for a couple of weeks, but I dealt with it. And it's like, yeah, you would have gone back to square one 4 years ago, and we would have had to start all over again. So, and that's just from, people want to deal with like big situations here and now, especially now as well, because it is a big deal. We're in a global pandemic. It's a big deal and nobody knows how to handle it because we've never done it before. But you just handle what you can. And if you try and handle the big stuff and everything, it's just going to be meltdown. If you handle the small stuff, then it gives you, again, it earns you the right to be able to handle the big stuff because it's a natural progression to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like you say, people take on board unnecessary stress as well, don't they? In their lives, I think, just through worry, and it's the old Stephen Covey thing, like this, your circle of concern and your circle of influence, and it's only really where those two circles intersect, where you have influence over your concerns, that you should really spend your time worrying, because there's very little point me sitting here in Chelmsford and Essex worrying about the COVID situation currently in Manchester and what they're going to do up there. It's just totally, it's totally out of my scope of influence or practice or whatever, And I think there's a lot of people at the moment who are sitting around worrying about a lot of stuff that they have absolutely zero influence over. And like you say, they're probably because they're focused on this term we keep using, or this global pandemic, when really you only have control over the way that you live your life and the way that the people immediately around you live their lives, don't you? So you're far better off scaling back these concerns to things that you can actually do and you actually have influence over. And some of those things are, keeping yourself fit and healthy and active and all the kind of things that we talk about all the time. And going back to something that Paul said earlier about the pause mentality, I see it very much that people have almost an on-off mentality. So it's almost like, you're either on a diet or you're off a diet, but when you're on it, you're trying to be perfect. And when you're off it, the shit really hits the fan and anything goes, and it's the same with training. And we mentioned Christmas, coming up in, this is going out, I think, right at the end of October. So, in the next sort of 5 or 6 weeks, that's going to be moving forwards. But some people, they hit that pause button almost at the start of December and the wheels just come off for a month. But I was having a conversation with someone yesterday. I said, actually, I think this year, certainly the way that we are going to be in the UK, it's looking like there's not going to be big office parties. There's not going to be massive group piss-ups. There's not going to be, even for my studio, we normally do a really big, Christmas do and like a member of the year presentation and that sort of thing. We're not going to be doing those things this year. So I actually think that for some people who have that tendency to just totally go off the rails, hopefully, touch wood, this year they may actually be able to, there's nothing to stop people, getting drunk at home, I know, but hopefully that can be curtailed a bit and we can be a little bit more measured and a little bit more conscious and a little bit more balanced, if you want to use that word, or moderated as we move into that period.
Goes back to that all or nothing. You so talking on off. It's all on. The amount of people sit in front of me saying, I'm an all or nothing person. But I've never seen examples of all.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is all? Olympic athlete? I don't know.
Yeah. What you mean? You're all or nothing, but 95% nothing and 5% all. When are you going to be asked?
I mean, I feel. I mean, I've never quite. It's difficult to know how to respond to that. Because I could say, well, what is all? What is all? All would mean you've achieved everything you want.
Yeah.
And nothing often means just doing nothing. And actually people are much more in between. And when I dig down into the reasons why they're doing currently not much, is because, well, why would they pursue something that isn't working? Why would you put a lot of time into your health if you're not seeing any results? And then when we drill down even deeper, we see why they're not getting results. And often it's because of a lack of fundamental skills, a lack of clarity, a lack of organization around time, stuff like that. And as soon as we start mending those broken elements of their behavior, and it doesn't matter whether they do fasting or they do the 5-2 diet or they do paleo or they do the diet system that I have, or they use kettlebells or run or whatever, they can achieve success when they start fixing those major kind of areas which are holding them back. And that is always the interesting part for me. It is, and that's why that first consultation, whether you have a consultation with a personal trainer or you do that process yourself, I think it is very important to actually lay bare what you're currently doing. And then you might be able to see the reasons why you failed in the past, because you're not a failure. No one's a failure. It's just that the actions and the behaviors you're currently undertaking are just not optimal for the result you want. They're good at getting you where you are at the moment, which is not where you want to be. So we've got to do something.
Yeah, that's a huge deal, actually. I mean, I started doing this on a program years ago, a program that I was involved in, because I used to be one of those people who was, it's all up here. You know, do you write anything down? No, it's all up here. It's all in there. I'm pointing at my head, by the way. It's all in there, you know. But what happens is if it's all in there, it's just cluttered. It's like a hard drive that's just full. You're just constantly forgetting things and doing things. Everything gets done on a Friday because you've just remembered that you were meant to do something. You're constantly having the people you live with at you. Have you done this thing yet? Have you done this thing yet? Oh, I forgot about that. And that happens with everything. So with your goals, with like, you know, with schedules and stuff like that. If you have stuff written down, you then can just look at it and go, right, I need to do that. And then all of a sudden you get things done quicker. You know, so these days I get to like, you know, Thursday lunchtime and I've done everything I need to do for the week. And anything else I do is a bonus.
You can do some of my stuff if you want.
No, it's all right. It's all right. I told you I live a meager like I've done that. I've made it like that because I can't handle it otherwise. But yeah, so and I've had that with clients before as well. I had it with one a few weeks ago, and I think I've mentioned this before, but it was not knowing what they wanted. So I was like, "We'll end the call now. Go away and write down. You know, just start writing what you want, and don't write a sentence. I want this done." Said, start writing and really just sit there for 20 minutes or whatever. And she wrote about like a 4-page Word document, you know, with no spaces. It was just boom, brain dump. And there was loads in there. And I was like, right, that's what we need to work on. So we'll pick it apart and we'll start there. Because there was so much in there. And I think that's where people can hold themselves back as well, not writing stuff down, because we're an online society now, aren't we? Everything. Oh, I'll know what I'll do. I'll keep a spreadsheet. It's like, yeah, you've got to log into your laptop. As soon as you log into that, Facebook pops up. You haven't even updated your spreadsheet, or you'll use a notebook or whatever. It's like, no,
or Twitter.
I've got loads of them. Get one of these. Yeah, exactly. Get one of these and write it down. You know, and you don't even have to take it with you anywhere. I have one of those, and it just sits with me on my table at home, so I don't need to take it with me anywhere. Because then what I do is actually when I've got stuff written down, I'm like, well, that's not important. That's not important. I end up with like, you know, 3 or 4 things to do in a week, rather than thinking you've got loads and loads. Because that's where people get overwhelmed, and overwhelm doesn't exist. It's just your reaction to the amount of stuff that you think you've got to do, when actually most of it you don't really have to do.
I mean, I think it's quite interesting that actually a lot of what services that maybe personal trainers, or certainly community-based personal trainers, in the sense that you're trying to build a community, you're trying to build a sense of kind of place, that a lot of people never really listen to. You know, no one really cares what their desires are. No one really cares why they want to stay healthy, what's important to them, because there's not really any space in society for that. Maybe with their partners, maybe with some of their very good friends, but really probably no one at work cares. You know, certainly other companies don't care. And so there's no real expression for these deep things in people. And actually, if you get it right in fitness, you can actually be a really good outlet for some things that are really important to people. That personal time, that sense of self, that sense of expression, sense of potential, which otherwise is just being held back and no one's really that interested. And actually, I'm quite interested, because certainly it's kind of what gets me interested. I mean, I'm interested in changing people's bodies. I'm interested in that transformative effect of health. And in order to get that transformation, we kind of have to dig deep. And that's kind of, I latch on to things to pull people through those pause moments, the moments when they want to stop doing things. It's like, well, actually, remember that conversation we had right at the beginning, in which you told me why this is important. You told me what's stopping you. You told me what your challenges are and how you want to feel and how you want to what you want to achieve in life and why it's important. And that's why you're not going to pause this time. That's why you're not going to stop. And that's why you're going to do your meal planning. That's why you're going to book in your sessions, because it's about you, and it's about bookending your time, and it's about changing your body so that you feel attractive, so you feel cool, you know, that you feel like you fit in the clothes, you're confident as you walk into a room, you know, whatever it is. And otherwise there's just no outlet, because no one's going to listen. Everyone on Facebook just puts the good things, you know, how good my life was. Or there's not really any room for expression, because it's only 120. I don't know, not even on Twitter. So I don't know how many characters there is at the moment, or Instagram again, which is just another very quick expression of, hey, look how cool I am. I'm here with my friends. I've got the right pose, whatever it is. You know, I mean, I never do anything on Instagram because I mean, I'm not very good.
What is the right Instagram pose, Paul? Go on.
Well, you know, it's
no, you got to. It's the pout, isn't it?
I don't know if that's more Stallone than anything.
None of us know. We're all middle-aged. We got no bloody idea.
The thing is, you never know what people actually look like or what they actually do because you just see kind of curated versions of it. And
the highlight reel, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And really, when it comes to personal training, it's kind of down and dirty, really, because you know, everyone's sweaty, everyone's tired. You know, you get people at the end of the day, you get people when they've just woken up. It's quite a bit of reality. No one in my gym has, well, I mean, maybe they have designer gear, but it's not really required. You just turn up. You know, I'd rather you didn't have muddy shoes. Because but other than that, you know, it's just like, let's just get on. We're here to do a job.
I think going back to what we were talking about earlier with the pause mentality thing, I think people tend to pause the thing that they think is going to be quickest to drop as well, don't they? And easiest to drop for them. And that's actually going to, so fitness for a lot of people is quite, it gives a lot of benefits to pausing it, you know, to their life immediately. You know, they may save money, they're going to save time, they're going to save energy by not doing, these are things they perceive they're going to save, you know, they're going to save money, they're going to save time, they're going to save energy, they're going to save effort. They haven't actually got to, you know, to do it. So it's quite an easy thing for people to drop. And it feels like it will lift quite a lot of weight straight away dropping it, you know. It's interesting, isn't it? It's what makes that kind of that shift in someone where they become the character, where it's almost, you know, that switch is literally reversed, isn't it? Whereby they know that I need to keep exercising and looking after myself and eating well, because when I do that, I actually have more energy and I actually have more time and I actually have more, you know, passion, and I actually have all of these other things that they have, maybe even to the extent that they have more money because they have more energy and more creativity and more, you know, to put into their business or whatever they've got, you know. So it's actually getting to that stage where that's flipped. I mean, and I can almost, I'm thinking at the moment, draw a line through, you know, the members that we have. Say we've got about 120 members, probably more than half, I'd say, but you know, if you could almost say, well, half of them fall on the line whereby they've crossed that divide. They are now the character that we're discussing, and half of them are probably still struggling to become that character. And they would, you know, fitness would be one of the things that they drop if given the choice. It's fascinating, really, isn't it? It really is, you know, to see.
But there's something really joyful when you do see people really come out of their shell. And they start like being really proactive about things. I mean, one of the things I do get, not to blow my own trumpet, but I do get quite a few texts, and I had one a few days ago saying, you know, it's great to have had these online classes because they kept me sane, that they've been rooted, they're kind of an anchor. And there's certain, I mean, why I like fitness in general, and why, because I came from a different industry, a creative industry, and it was really exciting, and it was kind of fun, and I'm sure there's a lot of people into music in the way that I'm into fitness, but I like what music didn't give me was this journey of a very structured and interesting way of self-development, because music tends to be more about the creative output, whereas fitness is very self-development. And I thought that was very interesting. And I think when people latch onto this concept of self-development, that they see things as opportunities rather than costs. And I think the more successful clients have seen the growth in themselves as individuals, and therefore they see it as a tool to help expand that growth rather than just something that they just do, you know, like buy a CD or go to a gig. You know, they're seeing it as a way of becoming themselves.
Mm. The way, that makes sense to me, because, like, you know, you were talking about, like, you can draw a line between where you're this person and then you kind of become that person. And I'm the same as Paul. I used to have a proper job before I did this. I used to say, actually, I did used to say that, but this is a proper job. I never used to think it was, but now I think it is. That was just because I'd come from sitting in an office, which I always thought was a proper job. But anyway, my thing was, the line was when I started to invest in it and I started to seek out things, you know, certifications and weekends away and all that, and like total immersion. We were talking about this last week. My thing isn't learning like little bit by little bit. It's just total immersion. Just chuck me in. I'll be there for 3 days or 10 days or whatever it is. Come out the other end. I'll be like, right, what can I take away from that and go and use that for 6 months, a year? Well, for the rest of my life, obviously. But like, and then you can start to take out bits that are like, right, well, that bit, it wasn't really for me, but this bit was. So if that bit wasn't for me, what can I use to go in that bit and then find something else? And it was when I started investing in it and spending money on it, rather than trying to find the cheapest things that will get me the fastest results, which never usually really works anyway. That was the difference. And then it was like, actually, I'm serious about this. I'm really serious about this. But the flip side of that is it's okay not to be as well. Because, you know, like we can sit here and go, yeah, it's so easy. All you do is you form your values and habits and blah, blah, and all that. But that's not easy because you need some sort of event which gets you there. And there might have been some smaller events. This is what I was talking about earlier about handling stress. There might have been some smaller events that you're like, right, that means I want to get fitter, stronger. That means this, you know, whatever it is. But it might not be compelling enough. But there usually is something, and it doesn't, you know, it can be later in life, it can be earlier in life, which is like, right, I'm on it now. I'm doing it.
I mean, that's interesting for James, but I don't know if you addressed this when you interviewed James on your podcast, Peter, because both me and Peter came to health quite late. I mean, it's not to say we weren't interested as kids or whatever, but so what for you, James, because you made it your career from a very early time. What has been in the driving force that's kept you going? Because you've kept your enthusiasm. That's what I really love about your posts and stuff like that, is your enthusiasm never dips, and you're 20 years deep in the game and you're still finding value. You're still finding exciting things. But unlike, I mean, I've worked in offices, I've worked in the NHS, I've worked in blah, blah, blah. You know, I've done very separate roles from the health industry, whereas you've been very immersed in that from a very young age. So, I mean, what drives you? I mean, what's made it so? What captured you? Was it just that you'd always done it and you just continued and it gained momentum, or was there something that, because it was always life events for me, you know?
Yeah, no, I think initially, well, why I came into it is very different from why I do it now. I think we, well, I can't remember who said it, but there was some quote, isn't there? That it might have been Muhammad Ali. Where he said, you know, if you think the same as you did 10 years ago, you've wasted the last 10 years of your life, or something like that, along those lines. So when I first went into the industry, it was because I really got into for the same reason a lot of people do. I really got into training, and I really enjoyed training myself when I was sort of like in my, you know, late teens, early 20s, and that's why I went into it. And then when I actually got into it, I found that I really, and I wrote a blog about this like years ago, which was called I think it's called like Batcopters and Gamma Radiation and Why I Started Unique Results. It's sort of tied in with superheroes and comic books and things like this. And it was really the thought of actually helping people and seeing, like you said, the transformation and the way that you can really help change people's lives. And so from quite early on, in my early to mid 20s, I loved working with people who struggled, you know, the underdog, the person who wasn't gifted physically, who wasn't, you know, who wasn't naturally strong, who was like the fish out of water in the gym, as it were. And then, but at the same time, I've constantly been kind of, probably every 5 years or so, I kind of learn something new or big that kind of takes me through the next 5 years, you know. So I suppose really, I'm kind of probably 22, 23 years in now. So I've probably had 4 or 5 big sort of moments of change along those times. But I think we've spoke about it before. It's always being the beginner, isn't it? It's having that white belt mentality and reading. And I was reading a book earlier today on coaching, and it's what I do, and it's what I love, you know, and it's what I think it's what I will always do.
Well, I'm glad to know that the 6th big event is working with both me and Peter.
Yeah, exactly. You know, But this is interesting. This is fascinating. You know, so this is
that's a whole other podcast. That's one episode. That.
but doing this health oddity is again, it's actually sort of reinvigorating the energy and the enthusiasm, and meeting and speaking to different people, and reading books and attending courses and workshops and certifications and that sort of thing. I mean, for the first time this week, I had one of my members come to see me and said, and they're both female, said, "Oh, we're really thinking of training for the Strong First SFG1 next October." So. And that was brilliant, because I've never had that before. So I straight away got on to Claire, who's the head of Strong First over here, and said, "Look, I've got 2 members who want to do it next October. Can I put myself down to assist at this certification?" Something else that I know you've done before, Peter, you've assisted, haven't you? But I've never done any assisting at these things before. So that's something new down the line that I'm going to go for. I think
it's a different experience, by the way.
Yeah,
I've never been on. I was on that side last year, and I'd never been on that side of it. It was like when I became a barman when I was like 21. I was like, "Well, this is what it looks like on the other side of the bar." It's weird, and it's really good though, because you get to see everybody go through exactly what you went through, because it's daunting. And it's it was great.
No, so I think I wish I had a really succinct, really great answer, but it's just it's just literally just remaining inquisitive and open, and just having that beginner mentality, and just learning and just meeting people and just immersing yourself in things.
Well, that's it, because there's never this point where you suddenly go, "Right, I've done health. Right, I've done it. Right, move on." It's kind of because you kind of got to do it for the whole of your life, and I suppose we never really address that.
Well, that's because that's not what people want to hear, is it? Unfortunately. We've been going a little while now. What I was going to say was, with everything, with what James has just said there, and why we 3 are now here, and it's not about diluting the amount of people but you go to things like Strong First, and then Strength Matters, and then various other things that we've done, and you end up seeing similar. You end up meeting new people, but also seeing people who turn up to the same sorts of things. Like the course I did last week, there's a guy who I was on something with years ago who was on it. And that's how I found out about it, because he'd done something else which drew him into it. And I was looking for something, and he said, "Try this." So I went and did it. And it's getting to know those people who are on like similar journeys, not the same one, but where you get different ideas from those people, and it takes you on all these different places. And obviously there's so much to do, but at least like it gets you to pick the right, not the right things even, but like things that are going to have some sort of value, rather than wasting your money on something that's like overpriced and they just chuck a certificate at you at the end of it, rather than actually, teaching you something. So it's been really good knowing you guys and knowing the guys in the wider community who actually have all of that and follow that and live that sort of life, to be able to say, yes, I am going to invest in this, because it's expensive, but the reward on the other side of it is huge, because you get to know more about yourself. So this isn't just for us, this is for people listening as well. Like anybody, you get to know more about yourself, and you get more value out of it as well. Definitely. Because I know personal trainers and gyms and stuff can be expensive, but if you're in a place like James's place or Paul's place, or you come to me, we invest a lot of money in ourselves to learn. So it's a huge deal, and you actually get a lot of value out of investing. Definitely in anybody who's invested in themselves, basically. Not us 3, but anybody you want. That us 3 do that, but anyone else who who does that, that's a good character trait. Kind of to say, I mean this, and I want to help people. That's what I've come to realize with it all.
We better probably start to wrap up soon. I think we've been nearly 45 minutes, possibly a little bit more today. Did you want to say anything? In a minute, I'll just quickly just let people know what we're doing next week. But did you have any closing remarks, Paul, or any final thoughts?
If you're looking to make the most constant progress, then at some point the pause button will probably be pressed, and you've just got to understand why it's being pressed. And the key is over time to press it less. Don't press it for as long. And as you said, Peter, it is an investment in education. And the more educated we become, and the more we apply that education, the less we'll need to press it. At times we do press it, we all press the pause button. It's not inherently a bad thing, but it is not something that serves your goals. And, we all help people deal with that. We all help people put structure around them. Sometimes it just takes a bit of structure, whether you create that structure yourself, whether you could create that structure with a trainer, with your family, whatever it is, the structure has to be in place, because if you just wander randomly, you'll be pressing pause all the time. So try and take control, try and put something meaningful in place, and then you'll start seeing the results you want.
Excellent.
That was like Jerry Springer's final thought, wasn't it?
No, that was excellent. Thanks, Paul.
Just as long as you don't get some of the guests on.
No.
It's definitely not.
That brings us on to who the bring now, doesn't it?
No, thanks for that, Paul, and thanks for the kind of the inspiration behind that topic of pressing pause and why people do it, and that discussion we had, which I think was really useful for me. Hopefully, it was really useful for Peter as well, and yourself, Paul, and the listeners obviously as well. So I just wanted to say, next week I've got a really special guest lined up, all the way from California in the USA again. Is Tracy Rifkind. I won't give too much away about Tracy, but she's a fantastic, proponent and ambassador for strength and for kettlebells, and for certainly as well for women getting strong and training and transforming themselves through strength. So Tracy's someone I've been really lucky to meet a number of times before. She's got an amazing story. She's written a best-selling book called The Swing, which is fantastic. And she'll be with us next week. So really looking forward to that. And as we've said previously, if there's topics you would like us to discuss, guests you would like us to approach to get on, then please let us know, and we will always endeavour to kind of do that. And we will continue to get guests on and talk about topics that hopefully are interesting for us and interesting for you as well. So cool. Do you want to do a wrap up, Peter, or is that a wrap up done?
Well, I think you did a very good job of it, stealing my wrap up there.
Well, this is where it all breaks.
I'll record it again, and you can open the show. Oh, blimey!
The animosity.
This is how it goes. This is live podcasting. This is how it goes. You see, free flowing conversation. We love it. Right. Anyway, that's enough from us. So, if we're done, say goodbye, James.
Goodbye, James.
Hey, say goodbye, Paul.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Yeah, goodbye. Thanks for listening. We appreciate you all. See you on the next one.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett, and James St Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com, or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Odyssey.